Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. How are you?
Happy Friday.
Yeah, it's getting there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, mate. It's weekend. Big game for your football boys this weekend, though.
Yeah, definitely. West Ham fan in you, United fan in me.
Mate, I even got the cup ready for it.
Oh,
We're
nice.
good. We're
I
good.
I do have a United mug, but I went for this one.
Paul, thanks for joining us. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 15th episode of the Six Sessions. Each week, I've been lucky enough to chat with someone in the growth space across marketing, sales, and CX. Today's guest is a prime example of Gamekeeper turned poach, someone who ran and grew a successful agency, but now helps other agencies achieve their own growth. But apologies for a Scouse accent. I did have to throw that in there first. I started out trying to keep this interview short and sweet, but it's totally gone out the window. We'll be here for at least 30 minutes, so you can dip in and out if you want to, or just listen to Paul's sultry tones all the way through. It's definitely unfiltered, which makes it fun. Today's guest is someone who describes himself as having a mission of helping agency owners get what they want from their business. What that actually means, we'll dig into in a bit. He's been part of the leadership team of two of the Northwest great agency growth stories. He now runs a consultancy helping transform themselves into well-structured, sustainable, and profitable machines. He's a terrible golfer, and he's recently become a first-time dad. Joining us all the way from Cheshire, I'm excited to close out this week with my good friend, Paul Earnden. Paul, welcome to the Six Sessions.
It's quite the introduction, that I think.
It is, mate. I sculpt these all week. I'm like, I'm definitely gonna. My idea is like I'm gonna have somebody break down and cry in good tears. Obviously,
I feel like I've got sort of Michael Buffer or Bruce Buffer behind me.
Yeah. Contenders ready. Yeah. So anyway, let's start off with an easy one. Why shift away from being in an agency? Why turn poach? Because let's be honest, agency life is rock and roll. All the time. It's all like sunshine, rainbows, and flowers on this side of the fence. Why turn to the other side?
The story involves you, to be honest. So I was at a conference in Boston, Massachusetts, and you were there also. And I'd known you for a few years prior to this, but I think this particular year was the one where we'd been in a bar. It was the night you arrived. You still had your suitcases with you, and I think it was 1 a.m. at this point. And anyway, that's not too relevant. But the next day, I was at the conference, and I was in one of the smaller seminar rooms, and I was watching sort of a smaller presentation, which basically was, there was 20 diamond agencies on stage. And for anyone who's not part of the HubSpot, partner program, a diamond agency at the time was seen as like the biggest and best agencies in the world, effectively. And it was almost like there was almost like a Family Fortunes-esque vibe to the presentation. It was like, we asked the 20 diamond agency owners on stage, what is your preferred project management system? And if I'm really honest, the answers were shit. The answers were like, if you were on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and you'd ask the audience, it was that 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. You could get nothing from it. But the second to last question was, how many of you have implemented EOS? The entrepreneurial operating system, and 19 of the agencies on the stage had, and one hadn't. I knew nothing about what this EOS thing was. Long story short, when I come back to the UK, learned about what it was, learned about the fact it was this operating system that helped businesses transform, helped them fix very common issues that business owners faced. We brought in an EOS implementer. We went through that 2-year process for 2 years. And ultimately, I decided I enjoyed the process so much that I wanted to give it a go, and I wanted to do it. And I left the agency I'd been at for 5-6 years. I'm still very close friends with the agency owners and people at that agency today. But it was something that I wanted to do, and that was sort of my shift.
Good story. Glad I asked. So the relevance of meeting me in a bar at 1 a.m. the night before the conference is just throwing that out there. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I just want to tell people.
No worries. So you started off your business just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
What's the first year been like for you? Where did you find the growth? How did you survive it as a new business? Because like a lot of people didn't. Like, how have you navigated the last 12 months?
It's been a weird one. So I started about 6 weeks before the pandemic started. And actually, when I say the pandemic started, we'd already started having cases in the UK, but there weren't tens and hundreds and even thousands of cases at this stage. There were sort of edge cases, and it was becoming quite a real thing. And I spent them 6 weeks sort of building up a really nice pipeline. I got clients in place. I did some work for clients, started working with some people. And then the true reality of the pandemic hit. We ended up in a lockdown, and almost immediately all of my work went on pause, because I guess, what I deliver is business improvement, so to say, and business improvement, process improvement, leadership coaching. That was something that people weren't too bothered about in the moment of lockdown, because suddenly people were super cautious about cash flow, their own pipeline, and ultimately survival. So spending, not tiny sums of money on things that are about business improvement and not about survival or growth or churn reduction was not really something people wanted to do. So I sort of used an opportunity in the beginning to sort of pivot a little bit and keep doing what I do, which is EOS implementation, but also look where else I can add value and who I can add value to. And for me, it gave me an opportunity to sort of really niche into the digital space, which I've got, 10 years experience in. So I used the first few weeks of lockdown really to sort of focus on products, positioning, set up some funnels, did some ABM. And whilst it didn't necessarily generate immediate business, I'm really sort of seeing the fruits of that labor now. And I'm seeing that as we're starting to come out of lockdown and confidence is growing in the economy, and business owners are starting to realize that it's not been, for some businesses anyway, it's not been as difficult a time as first imagined. They're starting to spend again. And, going through that pivot and looking at my products and services definitely helped.
So what's your main business? Like, what does Transformly actually do?
So I would tell people we transform digital agencies and we implement EOS. Not necessarily, we don't have to do those two. We always transform digital agencies. We don't necessarily implement EOS with every agency we work with. But in addition to EOS, I know I touched upon it before, ultimately it's an operating system in which you run your business on, toolbox of sort of simple tools, practices that you implement into the business, start at leadership level, work down, you fix, 6 areas: people, vision, data, issues, traction, and process. But ultimately, on top of that, various products and services, departmental audits, agency workshops, agency training, agency coaching, both at individual level and departmental level. I guess in short, it really is just agency transformation.
So you have a big, ambitious, marketing bullshit sounding mission, right? Yeah. So to help agency owners get what they want from their business, what does that actually mean?
I definitely need to work on it. I think I've thought of this a lot recently.
I say that as a friend.
Hearing you say it makes me realize I definitely need to work on it. It means basically that it means I can provide, we can provide agency owners with more of what they want. So pretty much more revenue, more profit, more time, on the agency instead of in the agency, a leadership team that's self-sufficient, accountable, an agency that becomes autonomous and sort of runs itself. Now, that's not to say, you do a few sessions with me and you can fly to the Bahamas or whatever and sit back. But the general premise of what I do is around, building up accountability within the business, making sure everybody knows what they have to achieve. Every seat and every role has a number. Everybody knows, what their day-to-day job is and what their future looks like. And as a result, the outcome of this is typically businesses and agencies that are self-sufficient and leaders that are able to take a bit of a step back because the leadership team is really acting and focusing as, exactly as a leadership team.
So obviously we did EOS, you helped us in that process. And for me, that transition was for most of there's a bit of imposter syndrome kind of creeping into this as well. But for me, the first few years of running an agency always felt like it was a bit of a house of cards, that a good gust of wind and the whole thing was going to come down. And once we put EOS in there, it kind of started to give us that bit of structure and almost like that growth springboard almost to then go into the next serious stages of growth, past survival and into now we're going to take on the world.
Yeah, because it's an interesting one, because none of EOS, and to be honest, none of my services really are focused on sales. And the reason I sort of made that decision is because I believe, and I've seen it firsthand in previous agency, and I've seen it with yourself and other agency owners I've worked with. When you have your processes right, your people right, the business know the vision, you're super transparent with how you talk to the business and you share numbers with them and so on, growth tends to be easier because your sales process, for example, is quicker and slicker. Your onboarding process is a dream. It's really easy to upsell to existing clients because you're hitting the results, you're reporting in the right way and so on.
For me, the main thing that EOS gave us, so we've always been like culture and vision driven, I would say, for like throwing in more wanky terms around agency life. But like that, like what we weren't very good is at articulating that vision across the rest of the business. And like it gives you that platform to be able to share that without it just sounding like me standing up at the end of the year to like tell everybody where we are as a business.
Yeah.
So what are some of the most common pain points you see with agencies?
I think there's a few. The first one I've been talking about a lot recently is the account management function. So the account management function in any business, but agencies in particular, for the context of this, is a growth function. It is there to grow revenue. It is there to ensure that every single account manager who has a portfolio of accounts grows their accounts accordingly. They do that ultimately by delivering success, staying close to the metrics and goals of their clients, and putting, I guess, other solutions and other services in place that focus on achieving that method. That focus on achieving their metrics and their goals. And because you've previously delivered success, the client typically has faith in you and the client typically trusts you, and the upselling should be far easier. I've seen so many account management functions now who are really just a customer services team. They're there to answer the phone. They're there to respond to emails. They must pick the phone up in 3 rings. They must respond to emails by the end of the day. They're not tasked with growth or even client happiness. Sometimes they're literally tasked with inbox zero, or they're tasked with, making sure support tickets are entered onto a system quickly or whatever it might be. And there just isn't that focus on growth. And for me, it's one of the easiest areas to get growth. Your existing clients, the advocates of your brand. And that's why I've sort of built some products and services around that particular issue. I think another is, I touched upon it before, not necessarily having a leadership team in place that is accountable. And ultimately they are just a group of expensive employees that are doing the same sort of job as other people around them, yet they're doing it for twice the salary. They're not actually helping drive towards that long-term vision. What they're doing is just hearing problems, having problems escalated to them, knocking on the agency owner's door, translating those problems back to the agency owner, shutting the door and walking out, and leaving that agency owner with, every waking night now sort of involves trying to put those fires out and trying to focus on those issues. And then I think a final one is data. It's being able to make decisions based on data and having a set of, say, forward-facing numbers or leading indicators that tell you that you need to react. So instead of, say, reporting on revenue at the end of the month and saying, "Hey, everyone, we're just finalizing the figures. We had a bad month. We were 40K short of our target. We're going to have to tighten our belts a little bit over the next 3 months. A couple of deals didn't come in and it's been a bad month." Instead of having that way of reporting, people need to be focusing on leading indicators and having, instead maybe focusing on your 90-day rolling pipeline so that you can say, "Oh shit, there's quite a problem with our pipeline. And if we don't solve it now, because we know our sales process takes 45 days or 85 days or whatever it might be, there's going to be a problem in 3 months' time." So then you've got 3 months to fix that problem. You've got 3 months to build the pipeline, 3 months to set up some campaigns, 3 months to do an ABM campaign or do a direct mail campaign and try and invigorate that pipeline. And it's not just having the numbers, but it's also having the process and the team which allows you to gather, review, and act on that data accordingly.
So the first one you mentioned was like that account management function. Yeah. What do you reckon the most important KPI for AMs to have, or like AMs, AEs, CSMs, whatever that kind of titling ends up being? What do you reckon that most important KPI for them to focus on is?
I think there's a few, but I think for me, the fundamental one is probably a metric that shows completion towards the client's overarching goal. So, if just for easy maths, if a client needs 1,200 leads over a 12-month period, and that's what the goal of your retainer is to achieve, having your account managers, effectively scorecarded on what percentage to completion they are on that target, probably, it causes a load of other sort of things along the way. So if you're 6 months into the year and you're 50% into the year, and one of your clients is at 98% of target, that those clients are absolutely ripe for upsell, for growth, for new services. Likewise, if you see that your clients, 10% through the target, 50% into the year, there's a problem. And to be honest, it's already too late at that point. You should have saw this problem month 1, month 2, month 3. And I guess maybe also NPS, maybe also, client happiness and understanding how likely a client is to recommend your agency to their peers.
How did you get into marketing in the first place?
This is genuinely the lamest story ever. I don't tell many people this, particularly you, because of
I'll keep it to myself, I promise.
Yeah, because of what our relationship's like, and you'll take the piss out of me forever. But basically, I was 11 and I was a massive geek, and I really wanted a PC. So I'm 31 now, actually 32 on Monday, 31 now, and it was 20 years ago. So PCs weren't cheap. And they were also awful. But anyway, they weren't cheap. I wanted one. My mum and dad really wanted to get me one, couldn't really afford it. My mum's best friend, who was also our next door neighbor but one, she was in the fire brigade, but on the side, she sort of like really got into building computers. So basically month by month, they would save up, they'd buy a particular part, motherboard, RAM, hard drive, whatever. And I would watch the process of this computer being built. And then I really was sort of fascinated by it. And then, I used to take it apart and put the RAM back in and take components out and rebuild it and stuff. And then I went through a period of 2-3 years of, doing similar things and playing around with PCs and so on. And then the embarrassing part is I got into an online game, a really cringy one called Habbo Hotel. And basically I played around with it for a bit and ended up sort of going onto the dark side of the game and joined this clan. And basically it was all around scripting and hacking and ruining people's rooms and making everyone's life a misery. And then all these clans started building websites to sort of show their achievements and so on. So I basically sort of jumped in the deep end of learning cPanel and sort of WHM and various hosting platforms and so on. Dreamweaver, building websites with iframes and sort of a website called PSD Tuts, which was like a tutorial website to put text on fire and shit like that. And sort of really got into building really shit iframe websites. And then, when I sort of started my career with college and stuff like that, I decided that, I could probably explore this further. So I started playing with WordPress and playing with themes and templates and downloading sort of pre-built things. And then realized about 20 years of age that I could probably sell some of these. So I started just chucking, WordPress themes up and selling them to really small local businesses on industrial estates for £1,000 here and there and so on. And did that for 2-3 years. And it obviously grew and I took a couple of staff on and so on. The positioning and what I did changed. But ultimately it all stemmed from being a huge geek and playing some really shit online game.
What did you study at college?
Computing. So that was like Delphi, coding and Pascal, business, weirdly sports, and then didn't go to any lessons. My attendance in year one was about 4%, and music.
So, because you're the 15th person I've interviewed on the 6 sessions, and 2 of them have had a marketing background. Everybody else falls into it. It is. I think it's become evident to me that I think if you end up as a marketer, you probably fell into your career at some point as a backup and then fell in love with it or got stuck in it. What excites you most about marketing and growth now?
I think honestly, right now where we're at with what's happened in the pandemic and so on, I guess it's honestly the chance to just get started again. And what I mean by that is so many industries have been crippled due to the pandemic. And in some industries, it's really not been easy to sell. There are some industries, hospitality and, maybe even like automotive and stuff like that, who haven't necessarily prospered in this period. There are other agencies, industries, home improvements and so on that have exploded because everyone's at home with shitloads of savings and they're having things done to their house. So I think that's going to change. And I think I'm more excited that sort of businesses around the world can begin to grow again, as opposed to being particularly excited about a particular technology or a particular stack. I think it's just going to be really exciting to see businesses go again and see things happen.
What's your, for Transformly, what's your growth plans this year?
It goes back to the product. So I have been, as I mentioned, I've been focusing on, I guess, niching down and building my products out. And I've behind the scenes been building, new website and everything to articulate them. I think my approach in year one was, until I realized this, was very scattergun. I would work with any sector as long as the business size was between, let's say, 20 and 100 staff, somewhere between 1 million and 50, well, probably 1 million to 100 million turnover. But as long as they had like an entrepreneurial agency owner that was still very much in the business, I definitely had, you mentioned imposter syndrome before. I definitely had levels of imposter syndrome when I was pitching EOS to, 7 accountants around a table who were twice my age. And I was teaching them, or telling them about this thing I could do that would transform their business. And it sort of hit me when I was doing that, these pitches would be far easier if I just spoke to people I knew, and not people I knew, but sectors I knew. Yep. So then I spent maybe my next 10 pitches in the digital agency world with agency owners around the country. And suddenly the conversation changed. It was like 5 minutes of me talking about what I do and 55 minutes of me talking about my experience and how I can help them and issues I've faced and so on. So this year for me, my growth is going to be not necessarily focused on, something new and something shiny. It's going to be focused on going back to doing what I know and working in the sector I know inside out.
Well, I think when you've got like a pedigree of like agency growth behind you, it's like a sector that you've grown up in and understand. It's going to give you that confidence that imposter syndrome is just never going to be a thing.
Yeah,
so it's the right move. And let's be honest, every agency is looking for support with growing. Like none of us are getting it right. And I think when, particularly like in some of the glass ceilings we've tried to go through in the last few years, having external support is key to like sustaining that.
Yeah.
Which brings me on to my next question. If you were an agency now, how would you be planning to grow this year? Where would you be focusing?
I think this is a bit of a cheat answer for me, but I would say focus on agency transformation. I would focus on process, on people, on really making your agency run well. Because as I said before, if you can get that right, agency growth, comes so much quicker. And I think most agency owners get into being a digital agency owner, get into being the owner of a digital agency almost by mistake. They're inherent marketers. They love marketing. They've got a marketing background. They've been client side. They've probably picked up a bit of freelance work, and over time that freelance work's escalated and they've grown. And because they've done that, suddenly they need more staff, and suddenly they've got 15 staff and they're an agency. Most agency owners I speak to don't go into agency life with an inherent knowledge of how to run a business and P&L and cash flow and forecasting and HR and all those things. And most agency owners I speak to, they can deliver services, they can sell, they know enough about those things, but it's the inner workings of the agency that need sort of oiling to help that growth. I think for me, a particular area, as I mentioned before, if I was picking an area that I was trying to, if I needed to find £500,000 in an agency right now, I'd look at existing clients and I'd look at the success stories there, and I'd look at how we can grow those clients, because too many digital agencies overservice clients, and particularly overservice their best clients. And I guarantee that if they present the right solution to those clients that adds an extra 20%, 30% onto the retainer value, but delivers that out the other end for the clients, they'll say yes, and you'll increase your revenue.
I mean, that's the gold dust that like sometimes agencies get stuck in, particularly like newer agencies, is we're so chasing new business that you forget about what you've got and the value in what you've already got. But not just for agencies as well. I think it's the same goes for like every business out there. If you've already got clients and you're doing good work for them, I think that's the important bit as well. Like looking for upsells where you're delivering a shitty service is always going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
But like if you've got good clients and they're happy, there's definitely scope for growth there. And I think that's what I think we had success with that during the pandemic, as new business like slowed down temporarily and then kind of jumped back. So yeah, I think it's a great avenue to take. And on that process side as well, like every agency is kind of building the processes while in flight. Like we're all fixing that plane as it's going along.
Yeah.
And I think that is like, if somebody had said to me at the beginning, like here is like a framework or like the cheat notes of all the processes that you're ever going to need, I would have jumped at the chance, because the amount of time that we've rewritten them, or like, to be honest, the first few years where we were running where we didn't have kind of articulated processes, our over servicing went through the roof, or like client comms would drop out, or like the switch over from sales to delivery would be dropped, like things like that. Basic mistakes that, because we didn't have a formulated process, it's very difficult to like entrench in the team as you're going through it as well.
Something I see a lot of as well, you know, as I mentioned a few times now, EOS is ultimately a packet of very simple tools, processes, and methodologies that work well together. And without having that framework, and without having someone say to us, you know, these 26 tools or whatever in this thing is the way you run your, you know, are the way you run your business. We used to chop and change what systems we used quite regularly. We start with OKRs, for example, as everyone does. And then, you know, OKRs, you go through a quarter, and the first quarter, nobody ever hits their OKRs perfectly ever. And then because of that, you think maybe OKRs isn't the right system, and you find something else and you jump onto that system, and then that works a little bit, but a new head of department comes in who used to use something big and shiny in a different company, and you move to that instead. And I think it's not just about having process and having tools, because I think everybody fundamentally has a level of process and a level of tooling for that. It's sort of nailing your flag to them and sticking with them and actually allowing them time to sort of work.
If an agency, like an agency owner listening to this, wanted to start like exploring EOS, where would you say they should go look?
I would say they would start reading Traction by Gino Wickman, which is I've actually got on my desk here. But it's a book that Gino Wickman, the creator of EOS, wrote. He's written 5 books now, sort of about the process that focus on different things. But Traction is probably the place to start. And then also, you know, I'm more than happy to talk to any agency owner about EOS, not necessarily from a sales perspective, but you know, something that I think uniquely places me as an EOS implementer. There's a number of them around the UK, not many, probably 20, you know, less than 20 official implementers, and I'm one of those. But I've actually been on the agency side, you know, going through EOS, and I've had EOS implemented to me effectively by an EOS implementer for that 2-year period. And I'm more than happy to talk, you know, as a previous agency leader, I'm more than happy to talk about the experiences I've seen and what it can bring to agencies. So
if it's my next line, but like if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Either my website, transformly.co.uk, or maybe Twitter, which is @Earnden. But my surname is a bit of a weird one. No one can ever spell. And to be honest, Transformly should be easy to spell, but we discovered before this call it might not be.
Paul, it's always a pleasure, and thanks for being up for doing the 6 sessions with me. It's been fun. And see, I told you I wouldn't embarrass you too much, although I do have one last question. So from a scale of 1 to 10, how important to your career do you think Robbie McFarlane being involved in it was?
Robbie McFarlane is a great guy. Is Robbie watching this now?
Oh, absolutely. Like he follows us everywhere.
He does. If Robbie's watching us now, I'd say 9. I'd say there's still some room. There's some things we could do to push that to a 10.
It's the grey hair, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if Robbie's not watching this, I'd say about a 6.
Fair. Any parting wisdom you want to share with us before on a Friday afternoon before we go?
Yeah, I've got one thing that I've actually been thinking about a lot, and I was hoping we'd lead on to it, which was around the future of growth and so on. And only this week, there's a story in the news that sort of has got me thinking about this. So people have asked me recently what's next in growth and where they should focus their efforts. And for me, I've got quite a controversial answer. I would say focus on what you know. And what I mean by that, there's so much shiny shit at the moment. For as long as I can remember, for the last 5 years, it's been the year of voice search. And nothing's ever really happened with that. We've got virtual reality, we've got augmented reality, we've got blockchain, we've got NFTs, the new thing, non-fungible tokens, which seem to be the new buzz. And they're effectively, a painting was sold this week for $69 million, but it's not a real painting. It's a picture of a painting on an NFT. And for anyone who doesn't know, an NFT is effectively a token that says, hey, just so everyone knows you own this. That's your picture. And it's a JPEG picture, and someone's paid 69 million quid for that because it's on blockchain.
At Jack sold his first tweet, didn't he?
He did. And don't get me wrong, blockchain's a thing, cryptocurrency's a thing, AR, VR, voice search, they're all things. But the amount of people and businesses I've seen in sectors, a chain of 3 restaurants, what can we do on blockchain? Nothing. You don't need to. Should we be thinking about voice search? No. I feel like at the moment, there is so much shiny shit going on that unless there is a genuine business case to use blockchain because you're storing property data in a certain way that needs to be never deleted, it needs to be immutable, it needs to be stored properly, whatever it might be, just forget about it and focus on things that are part of what you deliver as a business. Good. I think that's it, really.
What do you, on that then, what do you think of Clubhouse? New, shiny.
2 things. I think it's a shiny, no, I think it is a better way of things that already exist. So I don't think it's new, because webinars, what we're doing right now, effectively could be on Clubhouse. Yep. It's just a non-friction way of jumping into something like a webinar. Non-friction for me and you as host and guest, but also non-friction for the people who want to listen to it as well. So on one hand, I like Clubhouse, especially because I was very early in with the usernames and managed to get @PE, which is a great username, my initials. But then on the other hand, I do think that I've been through a process the last 2 weeks of unfollowing people because I'm fed up with some of the rooms I see and some of these like Monday morning motivation with Grant Cardone and stuff like this. And it's just people punching the chests as hard as they can. And
I can't think of a word
for Wall Street. Yeah. So I've been unfollowing people who I really don't care about recently.
Fair. Do you think Twitter Spaces going to destroy it?
I think one of the major social networks will probably just enable something similar. I think one of the things I've seen a lot of recently, and we've spoken about this together, is Facebook communities and businesses now. We're both in one particular Facebook community, a marketing one, which I think's got 2,700 members that pay $10 a month to be in. So this one guy's making, 25 grand a month, delivering his opinion and his sort of beliefs of marketing. But the real value, I think, in that comes this Facebook community of 2,500 marketers that you can talk to and engage with and speak to. And, it wouldn't be that hard for that room to have voice capability. So I do think that some of the big, like we've seen with stories and Facebook stories, Instagram stories, WhatsApp stories, Twitter's tweets or whatever it's not tweets. What's it called now?
Spaces.
No, yeah, something else as well. The new stories at the top are called something weird. Fleet, yeah. I think we're going to see a situation where every social network has a Clubhouse-like functionality in the near future.
And do you know what? I hope so. I just hope it gets a bit more substance. My biggest pet peeve with it is that it is very top level. There's not a lot of substance, and it is a lot of grandstanding. And I don't. Yeah. That's like I don't have a lot of time for that. I mean, like actual time for it, not as in like it's not something I dig. Anyway, dude, it's been fun. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Next week we have Megan Vincent from AirSwift joining us, so hopefully we'll see you next week. Cheers, Paul.
Cheers. Thank you.